Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. My name is Jess, and I'm going to be facilitating our presentation today. We are presenting, the CEnR team is presenting Towards Equity, Improving Health Literacy to Meet the Needs of Neurodivergent Research Participants. And I'm going to zip through the first, I don't know, 5 or 10 slides. We're going to go through the housekeeping of today and give just a basic introduction of the topic before we do some other activities. So we're going to go through these. Welcome. And again, we're here from the CEnR program, which is the Community Health Equity and Engagement and Research Initiative at Penn State College of Medicine. We are a group of 3. Paula Moody, who is another research project manager like myself, and then Jen Poger, who is the Director of Education and Programming for the CEnR Squad. So thank you all for being here. You can go next, Jen. Thanks. I want to go ahead and introduce our wonderful expert guest panelists who are going to be here today. They're also going to be presenting on the topic of the day. We're delighted to welcome 2 leaders in the field: Autumn Day Miller, PhD, Director of Behavioral Health Supports and Services at CenCrest, Board Secretary and Treasurer at Maverick Therapeutic Services, and Andrea Layton, MA, BCBA, Director of CEnR Autism Services, Education, Resource, and Training Program, to share their expertise. Dr. Autumn Day Miller, she Fay, is an autistic ADHDer with many other A words that describe her. She wasted her precious youth gathering 3 degrees in the biopsychosocial aspects of human services, focusing on the holistic vantage point of all aspects of health and wellness through human sexuality, a larger arena than most humans acknowledge. While she successfully celebrated the forgiveness of the loan associated with these expensive pieces of paper, she is returning to the wild world of learning to get another degree in marriage and family therapy because she recognized the lack of systemically focused mental and behavioral health professionals working with intellectually disabled and autistic partnerships and families. Autumn has been working in the field of disability services, providing trauma-informed, culturally sensitive, holistic, and systemically based clinical supports, as well as teaching and supporting human sexuality needs for over 20 years. Autumn is the director of the clinical department at CenCrest, but she is also the board secretary and treasurer at Maverick Therapeutic Services, board resource coordinator for the Montgomery County LGBT Business Council, a dissertation committee member at Widener University, a published author, and the fur parent to 3 adorable kittens. Autumn loves to run, do yoga, make video messages to share her thoughts, and take pictures of outfits for Instagram. So thank you, Autumn, for that wonderful description of your background and your work, and we're just so excited to have you here today. Andrea Layton, MA, BCBA, is a board-certified behavioral analyst and licensed behavior specialist who currently works as the director of the CEnR Collaborative. Andrea has worked for over 20 years supporting individuals with autism and intellectual disabilities in home, community, and research settings. Andrea, thank you so much for being here, and we look forward to hearing from you as well. Okay, so just some logistics for the day. Live transcription is available. Closed captioning is turned on. If you don't need to use this feature, you're welcome to hide the subtitles by clicking on Live Transcript and selecting Hide Subtitle. Please make sure, if you don't mind, entering your name or making sure your name is accurately appearing in your Zoom box so that we can make sure that we are able to track everyone who's here today. And we're so glad again to have you all here. And Paula, you're going to be monitoring the waiting room and admitting any additional attendees, so that'll be fantastic. Thank you. We can go into the next slide for the agenda. Oh, I'm sorry. Let's go back to the logistics. I skipped over that. Sorry about that. Again, the presentation is being recorded. Please raise your hand to ask questions. Please use the chat feature to make comments, share resources, and make connections. We do really love an interactive group, so please feel free to use that chat feature as much as you like. And just to let everyone know, all of the presentation materials will be shared post-session. All right. So moving on now to the agenda. Just quickly, we're going to do a little bit of background and important terminology regarding the topic. We're going to have a large group discussion. Then our distinguished speaker, Dr. Autumn Day Miller, will be speaking Why I Hate Spoons, Respect Accessibility, and Recognizing Assumptions Before They Become Limitations. And then we're going to have our other wonderful guest presenter, Andrea Layton, talk about neurodiversity in research. We'll do some question and answers and finally end with some additional resources. Okay, our learning objectives and goals for today. We're hoping that everyone will make some meaning of important terminology. Everyone will understand what it means to be neurodivergent. And finally, researchers will learn about neurodiversity in research and how to create supportive, inclusive processes when working with neurodivergent research participants. All right, so now we are going to move on and do just a little bit of background and some basic terminology that's important to kind of create a foundation for the rest of the presentations that we'll be listening today to. So neurodivergence, what is it? It's the state of being neurodivergent. It's an umbrella term which encompasses a range of neurominority conditions, and it includes a lot of different conditions as we have listed here. Some more well-known ones are ADD, autism spectrum disorder, but then there are some that not everyone is as familiar with, such as OCD, Tourette syndrome, and even PTSD, which will be an acquired neurodivergence. It's estimated that 15 to 22% of the global population exhibits some form of neurodivergence. And it's acknowledged that in the world we live in, it's really a world that's largely built for neurotypical folks and not so much those who would be considered neurodivergent or consider themselves neurodivergent. Some important terminology, and I'm going to admit that this is very confusing to me. I continue to struggle with this, but I think it's really important that we do try to understand and distinguish what these different terms mean, because it's just it's important as far as when we're working with folks and just general knowledge, of course, as well. But for our researchers and our projects that we're working on, this is just some basic terminology. Neurodivergent is having a mind that functions in ways which diverges significantly from the dominant societal standards of normal. Neurodivergence is the state of being neurodivergent. So that one I get confused a bit. Neurotypical is having neurocognitive functioning that falls into what's dominant society considers normal. Neurodiversity is the diversity of human minds, the infinite variation of neurocognitive functioning within our species. Neurodiversity is not a trait that any individual possesses or can possess. While an individual or group of individuals diverges from the dominant societal standards of normal neurocognitive functioning, they don't have neurodiversity. They're neurodivergent. Excuse me. My print is very small on my screen, so I'm having a little trouble with that, so I apologize. The neurodivergent movement is a social justice movement that seeks civil rights, equality, respect, and full societal inclusion for the neurodivergent. So what we're going to do is just, after we went over those terms, we're going to do a little fill in the blank exercise. And if everybody would want to go ahead and you can put the answers in the chat based on the terminology that we just went over. Again, I know it's very new to a lot of us and we're just getting it, but if you'd like to give it a shot, my sister is blank, but after growing up with an autistic father and brother, she's quite at ease with other people's blank. So if we want to go ahead and take a few guesses to the chat. And Paul, I don't know if would you be able to monitor the chat for me during this? Okay, so I see a few answers coming in. Yeah, a few others. All right, Karine, I see that you just, I think that you got it. So the answer is, my sister is neurotypical, but after growing up with an autistic father and brother, she's quite at ease with other people's neurodivergence. Okay, so let's go ahead and move on to the next one. And again, I just want to remind everyone that we're going to be sending these slides out to everyone, so you'll get all the definitions that you'll be able to look through and be able to apply to your work as well. This group is for people who identify as both queer and blank. Great, I see a lot of folks are going ahead and putting it in the chat. And the correct answer is neurodivergent. So great job, everyone. And again, remember, neurodivergent is having a mind that functions in ways which diverge significantly from the dominant societal standards of normal. And finally, our school offers multiple learning strategies to accommodate the blank of our student body. Excellent. I see some folks put it in the chat, and the answer is neurodiversity. And again, remembering that neurodiversity is the diversity of human minds, the infinite variation in neurocognitive functioning within our species. So what we'd like to do at this point is just have a large group discussion for a little while and talk about the following question. And what we can have everyone do is just raise their hand in their, just using the hand function, or just raise your hand up, that's fine as well. Or if you want to put something in the chat, you're welcome to do that as well. But what we're doing is we're going to talk about a large group discussion that is asking, in your experience, both personal and professional, what are some common biases towards individuals who are neurodivergent? So based on what we've talked about before and your own experiences, have you seen neurodivergence and biases in professional or personal experiences? And I'm having a little bit difficulty. Oh, there we go. I can see the chat now. Great. And I can't really see everybody. I'm going through, so I apologize if it's taking a little while for me to get to you if you have your hand up, but I don't see any up right now. Okay, so Glory says they often assume neurodivergent people are not listening or paying attention. Absolutely. Forgetfulness is seen as lazy or uncaring from Amanda. Yes. Okay, great. Any other experiences? When we talk about the neurodivergent, all the as an umbrella term, we can go back to the slide maybe.
Looks like Michelle has her hand raised.
Oh, great. Michelle, please go ahead. Thanks, Michelle.
Hi, yeah, sure. I was just thinking of sometimes facial expressions don't match the emotions inside the neurodivergent person, and people can get fooled by that and assume the worst.
Right. Absolutely. I think that's a really common way that biases come out towards folks, just not understanding maybe the different ways of expressing emotion that we all have. Anybody else? Fear of their differences. Gloria, I don't know if you mind, if you don't want to elaborate, that's fine too, but I would love to hear a little more what you mean by fear of their differences.
Sure, absolutely. Hi, everyone. Just being apprehensive about working with neurodivergent people because they may have heard stories about them being aggressive, or, just not feeling comfortable in that space.
Gotcha. Thanks so much, Lori. Anyone else? Do we have anybody who works specifically with folks under the neurodivergence umbrella? I'm just curious if we have anybody who has had some experience working. Paula, hyperfocus, hypersensitivity. Would you mind, Paula, elaborating a little more what you mean by that?
Yeah, so hi, everyone. So I do have some experience working with this population in my previous role. And I think sometimes the generalizations is that these individuals function with, I'll just say, blinders on as far as focus, that they're hyper-focused on certain tasks and aren't able to do what so many of us are expected to do at this phase in 2024, which is to multitask. And sometimes these individuals are kind of pigeonholed as far as being placed in a category where they're not capable of multitasking, or if they advocate for themselves and say that they function better focusing on one task at a time, sometimes they can be penalized for that. So that's what I mean by the hyper focus. Hypersensitivity is sometimes just from like literally from the word senses. So sometimes it's sensory overload that can be challenging for folks who have neurodivergence, or who are neurodivergent, sorry. And sometimes in certain settings, if they're exposed to a lot of like overstimulation from noise or lights or visual things, then sometimes that impacts their functioning. So that's what I would say
Great.
about those two things.
Thanks, Paula. I really appreciate that, your
Sure.
sharing. And then we had a hand up from Corrine.
Hi, Paula did an excellent job and said a lot of what I would have added. Yeah, I come from a neurodivergent family and have a autistic and two ADHD diagnosed children. So, everybody's a little on the spectrum there. The autistic son is a rocket scientist, and he functions very well in that role. The my other three children are all engineers. So, there are some forums where neurodivergence and the ability to hyperfocus can really be used well, but also find that sometimes employers take advantage of that neurodivergence and can easily burn out people that are not able to express their emotions the way that their employers can see, and there's some discrepancies that way.
Thanks, Corrine. Really appreciate that insight and you sharing your personal experience and your kiddos. They sound like they're doing amazingly well, which is fantastic to hear. So thanks for sharing that. Okay, and then Michelle, you had written in there that the quality of life is lower simply because of their neurodivergence. Sure. Carrie wrote underestimating ability of patients with Down syndrome or autism to provide assent. Challenges by MDs. Sorry, my little bubble's covering the rest of it. Evaluate or document cognitive function in absence of other professionals' assessments. Yeah. They only see, John Joseph says, they only see cognitive behavioral differences as negatives and overlook the positives like keen insights, etc. And actually, I think our speakers are going to be addressing that today, which will be really nice to hear about. Michelle also wrote, for people with pragmatic communication disorder, they are assumed to be low IQ or unfriendly because of their conversational awkwardness. Yeah, I had an experience just recently I'll share. My one friend, her daughter is autistic, and we all go to the same hairdresser, and her daughter was at the hairdresser a few days before I went in. And the hairdresser said to me, I don't understand, her daughter's so unfriendly and she doesn't know, like she didn't respond the way she would have expected. And I of course, explained to her what was happening. But it was definitely like a moment where you could hear the bias come directly out. Let's see here. Brianna wrote assumption that these individuals cannot make informed decisions. Yes, and we're going to talk about that as well today. Amanda further wrote, our building just had a fire alarm active. Oh, she just had a fire alarm activated. Apologies. So she must have stepped out. All right. Does anybody else want to add anything before we go on to our next activity, which actually is going to be one of our speakers starting up. So, all right. So let me go ahead and move my screen over here. Apologies, I'm having trouble with my there we go. Okay. Okay, so next we're going to have Dr. Autumn. Next, we're going to have Dr. Autumn Day Miller, She is going to be speaking about why I hate spoons, respect, accessibility, and recognizing assumptions before they become limitations. Go ahead, Autumn. Can't wait to hear from you.
Hi, folks. So if you didn't pick up from my ridiculously long bio, I'm a little bit quirky, but we're going to roll through this in the only fashion that I know how, which is highly caffeinated and a little bit game show hosty. So let's go ahead and get started. So you've learned a little bit about neurodiversity. I won't spend too much time here, but here is a list of just a few different types of neurodivergent brains. One of the ones that we don't acknowledge in America that's becoming a really big one, just so that you kind of hear it, is PDA, pathological demand avoidance, which a lot of us in the field and self-advocates are calling persistent persistent need for autonomy rather than demand avoidance, and just having that main focus on selfhood. Okay, next slide. I won't bore you with all the fun stuff. So how in the world do you communicate? Well, knowing thyself is what really truly helps us communicate with others. And for my neurodivergent brain, I had to get real honest. So let's just think for a second. Are you somebody who is like a logical, rational, linear thinker? Are you a mouth speaker? Probably. Most folks on here are probably mouth speakers. Okay, so that's how you choose to communicate. What about, are you like a fidgety dancer who makes up words and uses artistically detailed concepts and lots of body movement? Okay, we can be friends. We can hang out because you and I could probably really communicate super well. Do you reference things with lots of numbers? For those with dyscalculia, I always pronounce that a little funny, so just roll with me. I'm also from Ohio. That's a big disability in and of itself for social awareness. So, but that's a factor. So if you're working with someone with a neurodivergent brain who numbers, it just doesn't flow, but you're constantly referencing numerological elements and events, it's not going to mean anything to them. Do you ask people to read screens or on paper? I'll tell you one thing. I use Audible. I live by Audible. I can't pick up a book, read it one time, one page, and know the things. I am a very slow read processor. So if you're asking people to take in a lot of information that way, might not serve them. Do you use big, scary words, but smile with open body language the whole time? Confusing to some, really affirming to others. Do you use AAC? Do you speak with different languages or sign? Just recognize how you communicate. There is nothing wrong with how people communicate in a variety of ways. The point is, recognize where message sent is not message received and why. Just pay attention. Okay, let's play this. So tips for respectful communication. In the neurodivergent realm, most folks go to the default of identity first language. What does that mean? So instead, my earring just fell out. Instead of saying person with autism, you say autistic person. And yes, I had to take the other earring out because then I'm unbalanced and it makes me weirdly quirkier than normal. So I'll lean to one side. But this is where we roll with real life, people. If you are working with someone that you have not heard them reference autistic person or person with autism, just ask. Don't hesitate to ask the question. It's better to know and foible it first than to consistently hurt someone on accident by referencing things in a way that doesn't feel authentic to them. Mouth speakers and non-mouth speakers. So that's typically how the neurodivergent self-advocacy realm is talking about people who communicate using what we would have called verbal language or speaking in the past. But if you want to say verbal or non-verbal, that's typically for folks that have a physical disability. A lot of times I'm finding more in the self-advocacy realm of cerebral palsy that verbal and non-verbal language is used. So depending on who you're working with, know the audience and choose the phrases that match that group of folks. Delete from your vocabulary the concept of high and low functioning. I think in this day and age, like post-COVID world, I think we're all kind of low in the functioning realm because we're just trying to make it through for multiple reasons. There's lots of hate in the world and war and crisis, and not that it wasn't all there before. We're just fully aware of it because it's all over social media. So the concept of like high and low functioning, it's about power over mentality. And if you want to know the history of it, which you probably don't, and I won't bore you with a lot of the really gory details, but in the past, when it came to disability, people were put in two schools of thought. Could you give us things that we could use that have monetary value or have value to us? Okay, then we'll put you in workhouses. Could you not? Then you don't deserve to live. So that concept is really about life or death. So it's not a yummy concept. So if we can, I know this is really hard, delete the word special when it's not used in reference to, oh, that's so special, thank you so much, in your own context. If it's special education, I know that that's a big phrase, or special interest, but the word special is starting to feel like the R word for a lot of folks, and it's putting people in a power over mentality again. It's almost like there's air quotes around it. So if you ever encounter an air quote concept, you know you're not in a happy territory. Avoid interrupting an AAC user. It takes so much time to type things out and get the system to cooperate, to choose the right functions, to process what someone else has said and make a choice to make a response in a way that makes sense. Give folks time. Don't keep asking questions one after the other. And that's kind of true for most of humanity. Give folks time to process. Always speak to the person, but eye contact is not a must ever. If we ever spend time in a room together, you'll know my eyeballs are all over the place, and that has nothing to do with you. That has everything to do with shiny thing, shiny thing, shiny thing, shiny thing, shiny thing. And if you're wearing lots of shiny things, I might actually be making more eye contact with you. Moving along. As I said, I'm kind of a game show host with these things, folks, so just bear with me. Accessible communication. Forms. We all have forms for everything these days. Let's fill out this form. Here's a referral form. Here's a this form. Here's a that form. You got a survey. Read it. Do an audio and video element. You want to make something accessible? Don't just have the form. Have the sound of the words for people. And the beauty of that is it's more accessible to folks that are audio processors, and people can listen to it over and over again. And have a video element, because your expressions, your body language can help someone truly understand what's being asked of them. That's super important for informed consent. Oh, that was fun. Okay, so signatures, electronic draw touch features. Don't ask people just to sign paper. Sometimes the sensation of having to print something out and that sound and all the steps along the way, it's not accessible to most humans. And I'll tell you, most of us do not have printers at home. So having electronic signatures available, or having things that people can download onto their phones and choose when to sign off or not, super helpful. That's extremely helpful in folks with PDA, because it's hard to sign the thing or push the button to say yes, because it feels overwhelming because it's not their choice. So only when folks feel that autonomy are they going to have that accessibility. Are your forms fun? Where are the pictures? I have not encountered a form in a doctor's office that was fun. It all is like, how are you going to die? Please check the boxes. And it's a little murdery. Like it doesn't serve. Like, why would I fill out a form that doesn't serve? Have fun things incorporated. It was so funny, like the fill in the blank. You could do a fun fill in the blank. If I were to describe myself, I would say this hurts the most often. I know that sounds really funny. And it's like, what does that really mean in the grander scheme of things? It means people are going to be more engaged with what you're asking them to fill out. And that's really what we're doing here, engagement. Because communication is not just about I'm saying things to you. It's I'm asking you to respond. And this is how we get people to respond in the way that really, truly meets them where they are. Link terms to definitions that are read aloud and used in sentence. Oftentimes I'll see forms that pop up and it's like, here, do you approve? Check yes or no. And half the words on there are $3 words, as my grandmother would have said. And if you don't have a clickable and audio definition of what that word is, it's not accessible. And this is true for so many humans. It's not just neurodivergent folks. In fact, many neurodivergent folks are really hyper aware of how many words are out there and can teach you new words. So really, this is just about universal design. For bigger research projects, do video-informed consent at each step. Don't assume that if someone is comfortable with steps 1, 2, and 3, that step 4 is going to be something that they can stomach. A lot of times, I can handle, if my honey tells me to do the dishes and then clean the windows and then wipe down the bathroom, I've gotten step 1 and 2 done and forgotten number 3. So what was I supposed to do again? You got to check back in. You got to get that informed consent at each step. And having the video informed consents is also about trust. If you're not willing to put your face, your mouth to that informed consent element and share, like, here's what we're asking of you, how am I, as the person you are asking to do this research project with, supposed to trust you? It's a huge step in the right direction. And consider asynchronous video messaging platforms. I am a big fan. I'm actually hoping one day they call me to do a commercial. I'm a huge fan of Marco Polo. And I've found that a lot of times when you're working with neurodivergent brains, we need to process things, and we process and we process and we overprocess. But like doing it on the video messaging platform is like doing it with a person. But then on the other side of things, if somebody sends me something, I don't have to look at it right away. I don't have to engage with them in the moment when I'm not feeling safe. I can take things in at a time that makes sense for me. Next. Research assumptions. We like to say that the study is safe. Ain't nothing about this world that feels safe some days. Safe is a sensation.
Good. I'm just like sitting in a meeting.
Hi, Holly. Okay. So safe is a sensation that we feel on the inside. If we don't feel it on the inside, then what we're asking people to do is just join in the pool with us without really truly feeling that safety. That's masking. We don't want folks masking. We want folks being their authentic selves. So we can say, this is how we're enhancing your safety, but we understand that you are not actually potentially going to feel safe at all during this entire process, which will affect study results depending on what you're looking for. Just a little asterisk element there, folks. Asking people questions is safe. Oftentimes, the thing that we encounter when we're different in this world is lots of questions. Why? Why do you think this way? Why are you doing this? Questions themselves can be really overwhelming and unsafe. So just recognize that how you ask the question is super key. And don't think if you use it as a declarative statement with options that it's already safe. Oftentimes folks are encountered in the behavioral realm with those kinds of, are we taking your shower before or after lunch? And that feels like the walls are closing in, especially for folks with the PDA. Why do I keep bringing this up? It's a piece in America that we just don't get yet, and Europe has gotten it down. So I'm trying to help you know this stuff now, so when it actually becomes a thing, you know what's coming. So validity with one brain equates validity for all brains, or most of them. Not true. I think that there's a lot of piloting and testing that's done in research studies and in a lot of the tools that are out there these days, but it's typically for neurotypical, neuroconforming brains. And when we do test them with neurodivergent brains, there's so many flavors of neurodivergence out there that what we're asking people to do is fit into this mold with this brain. And it's just recognize that it might not actually meet the needs. You might not get the question answered that you need, and it's okay. And that's why we just try to have a little bit of humanity in what we're doing. Recognize your own limitations. Reliability checking isn't evil. Do you know that in most survey tools, they will ask the same question reworded 2 or 3 times to check reliability? Do you know most neurodivergent brains can scan that sheet and pick those questions out faster than any other brain? Why? Because it's obnoxious to be asked the same question in different ways. It is so funny because I have had whole fights with people on questionnaires that had multiple wordings of the same question to check for reliability. And I say, it's because those other people who created this thing, they don't think that you actually know what the hell you're doing. And it's on them and it's not on you. And acknowledge it. This is for their benefit, not yours. And you can literally put an arrow if you feel the need. Really validate yourself. I saw that. I saw what you're doing here. You can't trick me. People prefer face-to-face interactions. Not true. If all of you were in the same room as me, I'd be stumbling over my words even more than I am now because my anxiety is off the charts. You can't see it. I have a fidget in this hand. I have fidgets down by my feet that I'm squishing my toes into. Ew, feet. I know for some people that could have been a really awkward moment. But just trust me in the fact that in-person interactions can be extremely overwhelming. Do I like people? Of course I like people. I actually really enjoy people way more than my significant other who's in that other room does. And they see a lot more people than I do, but I really do enjoy humanity. And most neurodivergent people do as well and want to be around people. But it is so overwhelming that we can't get done what we want to get done. That's the key. Because if you're asking folks to do things, recognize less stimuli in order to get the tasks done. Time allotted. Funny. I'm actually really good with time. I try to stay within my parameters, but even I'm a little sweaty because I'm like, oh my God, I'm going over 10:35 because they said 15 minutes. I'm sweating. So I'm going to try to speed things up, but it is very funny when somebody tells me how much time they have allotted for something, especially if someone uses AAC. Good luck to you. Triple that amount of time. And incentives will help. Not always. Sometimes it does help to pay someone for their time because that's their time. But just giving someone something doesn't make people feel like this was worth it. If you appreciate somebody and everything they bring to the table, that might actually be the next piece that gets them to come back the next day. Don't just tolerate, appreciate. Next page. Live and learn. Flexibility is key. Use the rule of 3. If something isn't working 3 times, try something else. There's a reason why 3 keeps showing up in lots of fairy tales. It is the magic number. A lack of an answer doesn't mean I do not have one. Just because I couldn't give you one then doesn't mean I don't have 16 answers that are so overwhelming that I can't pull one out for you. I can't grab it from the sky and hand it to you. So the important part is to ask things and give space and time for processing to happen. Do you need to write it down? Do you want to dance it out? And honestly, that is something I've asked people. And sometimes physical movement helps. Have versions of questions available. Words, pictures, phrases matter. Like I said, don't just rely on one method. When you do, the only brains you're going to get to respond to that are the brains that match that element. You want as many different brains as possible showing up to the room. Always integrate sensory elements into your work. Movement, tactile, smells, sounds. Oh my God, my whole office smells like Captain Crunchberries. I can't eat them, but this candle is delicious. Remember, smells are important too. Onward and upward. Why do I hate spoons? What the hell was that in your title of your thing, Autumn? Oh, let me tell you. From a disability advocate world based in chronic illness, the concept of spoon theory, where everything takes a certain amount of energy to do, and however many spoons we have left is how much we can do at the end of the day. That concept, it's great. It's been pulled into different elements of the disability world where that spoon and energy correlation, it's really helpful to get people who don't have these experiences to understand. Except energy waxes and wanes. Just because something took 5 spoons on Monday doesn't mean it won't take 12 on Friday. Not because it's Friday, but because something about my physicality, my experiences earlier in the day, my energy level in general, I forgot to drink water, you name it. It waxes and wanes. And they do not equate joy, just survival. And that's why I hate spoons. So just because something takes so much energy and I can get through it doesn't mean I actually enjoyed myself. And this is really important to recognize in the neurodivergent world. Most of us are just getting through life, and it's damn time that we really had people recognize that joy is not just about making it through to the end. It's about enjoying the experience and finding the fun in every moment. So spoons don't capture it all, and that's why I hate them. So any of you who really love that spoon theory, that's what's missing there, the joy. And it's only the start. So this neurodivergent piece is only a sliver of it. There's a high correlation of neurodivergence and the LGBTQIA+ community. There's a high correlation to mental health needs, physical health needs, housing insecurity, and so much more. So just because you've made accessibility a thing for this realm, don't forget the language, the communication style, the needs, the survival techniques of all these other humans. Remember, universal accessibility is probably the go-to thing that we're looking for in this world as we find more correlation between different marginalized communities. And other is just a concept. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Autumn. That was wonderful. Really appreciate everything you've shared. And I know I learned a lot of things listening to you that I would love to ask you about maybe when we have our question and answer segment. So, all right, onward and no, not onward and upward. That's a bad saying to say. I'm going to say next. How about that? We have Andrea Layton, who is MA BCBA, who is going to be speaking to us about neurodiversity in research specifically.
Good morning, everyone. Yeah, I think I need like a fraction of Autumn's energy this morning. Autumn and I have actually met before today. We were part of an Echo series together. So always great, Autumn, when I get a chance to like see you again after that. It was fantastic working with you on that Echo. So anyway, I will try to like get myself going a little bit. I'm definitely feeling like a little bit more subdued compared to Autumn here. I think I need to either start drinking coffee a little bit more, or I need to up my game a bit. Yeah, so I'm going to talk a little bit more about neurodiversity in the research and the work that we do, and how we can be a bit more inclusive and thoughtful in some of the stuff that we're doing, and really kind of just give some best practices or things that you can do or that we can do. I'm going to go through these first couple slides here pretty quickly, just because I feel like it's stuff that Autumn has touched on, other people have touched on already this morning, really just kind of coming at it from a different perspective of, why do we need to be focusing on neurodiversity in research? Why are we talking about this at all? And I think, in the past, individuals who would have been identified as neurodivergent were either excluded from research or there wasn't a great history of them being involved in research, especially medical research in the past. Or they were, like I said, they were flat out excluded from it. So that's probably not great, right? And with the whole move towards neurodiversity, really looking at the fact that, the difference is the fact that people's brains function in different ways and everybody's brain kind of works a little bit differently. That's not a bad thing, right? It kind of points to that biodiversity. And, if these differences have persisted, if you're looking at an evolutionary standpoint, like they have persisted for a reason. These brain differences that are still there, clearly they're strengths. And we kind of need to be focusing on those sorts of things and including them in our research as we're moving forward. All right. Move forward. So again, I know personally when, over the last few years, the equity, diversity, inclusion, those efforts that have been coming out, when they first came out, it was a lot of ethnicity and race and gender and all of those sorts of things, which are incredibly important. And what always seemed to be missing from the beginning of when these discussions were happening was that neurodiversity talk, is the fact that when we were talking about inclusion and equity, you know, equity, inclusion, diversity, all of those sorts of things, that wasn't being discussed. And I know I used to sit and like see all of those emails that come out about we're doing this effort and we're doing this effort. And I always just would sit there and go, where's the talk about neurodivergence? And where's the talk about that in these, you know, discussions that are being done? So again, when we're talking about these things, anywhere from 15 to 22% of the population is neurodivergent. That's a big chunk of the population. That's up to, you know, 1 in 5 people is going to fall under that neurodivergent umbrella. And so, you know, really making sure that we're including that in our discussions and that we're thinking about all those sorts of things moving forward is, again, just another reason why it's really important to include it in the research and the work that we do here. All right, next one. The other reason I will speak more to autistic individuals, that's my background and expertise, that and intellectual disabilities. But, you know, why, again, is it important to include this in research? It was really scary to me. Number one, my oldest child is on the spectrum. So knowing this and seeing these sorts of things, that the life expectancy for autistic individuals is 20 to 36 years shorter than the general population, that is frightening to me. And there's a lot of reasons for that. And it involves, you know, health risk factors where these individuals are, you know, they have higher health concerns when it comes to epilepsy or gastrointestinal disorders, sleep issues, feeding issues. There's a lot of poor access to healthcare. There's risk factors like obesity, long-term psychotropic medication use. A lot of them have just limited kind of physical activity. All of these sorts of things kind of lead into these really adverse physical health outcomes. And there's a lot of also, not just when we're talking about health side of things, but safety concerns, accidents, the rates of accidents and death from accidents is pretty high as well in this population. So there's a lot of reasons why, and there's a lot of concerns, and there's a lot of health concerns for these individuals. So including them in research is super important so that we can kind of learn more about this, right? We made huge gains when you're talking about, you know, Down syndrome and individuals with Down syndrome. 20, 30 years ago, life expectancy was pretty low for individuals with Down syndrome, between heart conditions and childhood leukemia and all of those sorts of things. But now the life expectancy for an individual with Down syndrome is way longer. We learned more, we provided more supports and more health, you know, related things. So kind of doing the same here. To me, it's an issue. 20 to 36 years shorter than the general population. Clearly, we have work to do in supporting the health of these individuals. All right, so what can we actually do? These are kind of just hard and fast things that when you are doing research, what can you do to be more inclusive, to make it work better for neurodivergent individuals? So we'll kind of go through like each of the sections that you can think about in your research. So pre-study, before you even start your study, before you even do anything, really consider you know, that reciprocity, that there are clear outcomes, that there's clear outputs that are going to actually enhance or advance the research. It's not research just for the sake of doing research, but, you know, what is going to be the benefit? How is this going to advance the research that's already there? Transparency. There was, and all of this stuff came from research and getting information from autistic individuals, right? What do they want? What are their concerns, and where do these kind of recommendations come from? Giving background information on the research, on the researchers themselves, on the research team. Why are you interested? Why are the researchers interested in studying this? What is going to be, or what is the perceived impact of the research that's out there? Again, you know, Autumn brought it up. There's not necessarily, there's a little bit of hesitancy to get involved in some research, right? I worked with a lot of people throughout my years who have been institutionalized. And unfortunately, things that were done to individuals in institutional settings was not great when it comes to biomedical research back in the 50s and 60s. So having that transparency, taking away that fear of what is this research going to be used for? Why are you interested in this stuff? Can really kind of help people feel more comfortable, feel more willing to participate in the research that you guys are doing. And really just kind of having that involvement at all levels, from the beginning planning stages you know, to the end of having the outputs and what those outputs are going to be looking like, and making sure that you're including neurodivergent people in all of those areas. You know, do you have somebody that's involved thinking through like ways that you could make these things work throughout the entire study? When you're talking about recruitment, and I know Autumn touched on some of these things as well and what she was going through, details of the study, and I mean details of the study, of exactly what is going to be asked of the individuals, right? And clear, concrete, simple language, using pictures, using images, videos, any of those sorts of things. Any way that you can get multimedia sources involved is going to help them understand. People learn in different ways. Presenting information in multiple different ways can be really helpful for them to really just understand what's going to be expected of them, and to be able to really, you know, understand and be able to consent and do those sorts of things. Having materials reviewed by experience groups, right? Assert the work that we do. We work very closely with a self-advocacy organization. They review almost all of our materials that we develop for self-advocates, specifically because we want to make sure that it's understood and that we are using the proper language. So make sure that you are including individuals. Have people review the language. Have them review your consent form. Does this make sense to them? Do they understand the language? Is there any questions that they have? If you are using images or pictures or things like that, or videos, are they okay? We created videos one time where we had somebody speaking and in the background we had music going at the same time. So like it was like a voiceover, and they said, nope, that music in the background is too distracting, take it out. So making sure that they're reviewing it, no matter what it is, print resources, images, videos, getting that input is super important and can be very valuable when you're developing materials for them. And then really, again, so that's seeking the connections with the autism community, just making sure you're getting self-advocates. They can be a really great source of information of like, hey, this is great. Hey, maybe you need to tweak this a little bit. All right. I've got like a fly buzzing around me. It's distracting me. During the study visit itself, making sure, you know, so there are transportation issues for some individuals. So, you know, can you help them or work through some of those sorts of things, travel to and from any of the study visits? I know that at the College of Medicine, our buildings are ridiculously confusing to try and navigate, and how you get through and where you have to park on campus and then get through the building to where that is. Making sure that you are being very clear, that you're giving, you know, really good instructions, again, using images. Not even some of the maps of our campus can be quite confusing when you're doing those sorts of things. So making sure that people know how to access the study site and can get around to where it is that they need to get around, and presenting that in different ways. Trying to figure out, sorry, lost myself in my notes. Just the environment in general and the sensory considerations, right? Again, if somebody during the consent meeting, and you can kind of find out some of that stuff, do they have sensory sensitivities? Can you make adjustments for those sensory sensitivities? Really being flexible kind of during the study visits. If it's going to be a longer visit, plan for breaks. I know when we had, we were doing consents for some of our research, we definitely planned longer periods of time for the consent process, and doing the pre-study visits and those sorts of things, and giving lots of time for breaks. You know, it can be a lot. It can be overwhelming at times. So plan for that, be flexible, make sure that you have a space maybe that is quiet, that is relaxing, that maybe has softer lights if they do need to take a break, or if they do start to feel like they're getting overwhelmed in the moment, that you kind of have that already set up and ready ahead of time for them. And if you can, if it's, you know, if you're doing research and it's going to involve, you know, any sort of equipment or medical devices or anything like that, if you can let them see those devices, touch those devices, understand how they work, how it's going to feel on themselves, if, you know, EEGs or anything like that, that can also be helpful, kind of planning ahead and letting them know, letting them see, letting them understand, letting them touch those sorts of things before they're going to be used in the study on them, on the individual themselves. All right, and then the final one here. So post-study, really, again, just being, oh, sorry, that was just for me, moving on to the post-study stuff. Just really explaining, telling them what happens next, right? So you participated in the study and here's what you can expect next. And this is when you can hopefully expect to get the results of the study, or like when we're going to know what, happens from everything that we learned from you participating in this. When you're giving that information, consider putting it out again in different formats, making sure that you are putting it in layman's terms when you're disseminating the information to the participants, including graphs or images, not just like, a regular research findings of long paragraphs of information and statistics and any of those sorts of things. If you can make it visual with simple graphics and really highlight the points, that can be super helpful. Can you do a web page that has the information on it, that has the findings of the research that you guys did? Any of those sorts of things can be really helpful, and definitely things to consider and thinking through. The other thing is the final recommendation when it came to post-study stuff. Actually, there was two, making sure that it's also being disseminated to relevant stakeholder groups. So, partnering with other, organizations out there, health systems, those sorts of things to kind of get the information out, not just in the research journals, but then also kind of potentially having an open seminar or a workshop for a discussion of the findings so that they can ask the questions, that it can be explained a little bit more, and they kind of have that feedback at the end. Okay. And those were my hard and fast recommendations.
Andrea, that was awesome. Thank you so much. That was just such valuable insights and really good, just practical information to use for research. So thank you very much for that. So I am sad to say that I don't think we're going to really have much time for question and answers, just because we're almost at the 11 o'clock mark already. But I'm so grateful for our presenters today. Autumn Miller and Andrea Layton, you were fantastic, and you just made this so special for all of us. So thank you very much for your time. I think what we'll do is, if you have questions, if you want to put them in the chat, we can maybe forward them to Autumn and Andrea. And if maybe you wouldn't mind giving us responses, we could even do like an email or something, put something together, or in the post-session resources that we always send to everybody, we can maybe include it there. So again, thank you so much. So let's go and look at the resources here. We are going to be including this information again in the post session when we send all the materials, so you don't have to jot it down. But we do have some different websites here that offer some really, really wonderful information. So please use those for, when you are working and trying to cater towards the unique needs of neurodivergent research participants. Also, just to let you all know that the CEnR team is working on creating a visual roadmap of what the research process looks like. And we're trying to develop that so it will be part of the consent process for our research here at Penn State. So that is something we are working on right now. Okay, so call to action. In the chat, write something new that you learned by attending today's session. So if everybody would want to go ahead and just take a quick minute and do that, that would be awesome. Also, we are uploading right now the poll, the end poll for today. Oh, wonderful. So thank you for that. It looks like we have, okay, and we have a variety of answers. So thank you for that, everyone. All right, excellent. Okay. And we're also going to put a link in the chat for a post survey. If we can go ahead and put that in there. I'm assuming, Jen, you got that already taken care of. And some upcoming programming that we're going to be having, the CEnR team will be presenting. The next one is going to be on June 25th, and it's the impact of AI on fairness and equity dilemma. So we're going to be diving into artificial intelligence and how that can be affecting inequities and research in that way. So Jen, I'm sure you put the link in the chat already. I'm sorry I don't have access to it. If anybody does have any questions about today and the content that was covered or our wonderful speakers, please feel free at any time to reach out to the cheer team. Our email address is right there. Or if you have any suggestions, thoughts about what you would like to see in future educational programming, we are always open to your ideas, and we do try to make sure that we are listening and respecting and responding to whatever you're asking for as far as our educational programming. So I think that's about it for today. Thank you everyone for attending, and we will hopefully see you again next time. And again, follow-up materials will be coming shortly in an email. Thanks, everyone.